You're not part of this family anymore." Those were the exact words my mother said at the dinner table. Her voice was cold, like ice cutting into my chest. My father didn't even look at me. He just kept sipping his wine like I didn't exist. My sister, of course, was glowing in the spotlight. That night was supposed to be her celebration. I wasn't even invited. I showed up anyway. And thank God I did, because what I brought with me changed everything. But let me take you back to the beginning. Growing up, I was always the outsider in my own home. We lived in a fancy house in upstate New York. My parents were successful. My father was a lawyer, my mother a socialite. My younger sister, Nicole, was the golden child. Blonde, elegant, perfect. Everything I was not. I was darker skinned, adopted, something they reminded me of subtly, day after day. I never saw baby pictures of myself on the walls, only Nicole's. I got hand-me-downs, she got designer dresses. I ate whatever was left, she got fresh meals. But I kept quiet. I believed if I studied hard, stayed kind, made them proud, they'd love me like they loved her. That was a fantasy. By the time I turned 18, they gave Nicole a brand new car and sent her to Paris. They gave me a cardboard box of my things and told me to leave. No explanation, just, "We've done enough for you." So I vanished from their lives. But they didn't know what I'd become. They didn't know the secret I uncovered, the one that would bring their world crashing down. And they had no idea. I was going to reveal it on national television. The first night after being kicked out, I slept in the backseat of a stranger's car. It was unlocked and it was freezing, but at least it was shelter. I had $27 in my wallet, no backup plan, and no one to call. Nicole had hundreds of thousands in trust funds. I had nothing. I worked odd jobs, washing dishes, handing out flyers, mopping floors in gas stations, anything to survive. For months I lived in shelters and cheap motels, slowly building a tiny savings account. I never told anyone my last name. I was too ashamed. But something inside me refused to quit. Every night before bed, I whispered, "You'll see me again." I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew. I couldn't stay broken forever. One afternoon, while delivering takeout to a high-rise office, I overheard a conversation about a scholarship for business school. No tuition, just a written application. I applied using a library computer. 1 month later, I got the call. I was in. That day changed everything. In school, I devoured every textbook I could find. I started tutoring rich students who didn't care about grades. With that money, I bought a cheap camera and began recording business tutorials on YouTube. One went viral, then another. Then a brand offered to sponsor me, then a second. By 24, I had built $1 million brand around self-made success. Nobody knew who I really was. I changed my name legally. I kept my past locked away, like a monster in a basement. But that monster wasn't done with me yet. One morning, a message came through my inbox. No name, just a photo. My father, my mother, and a child, one I had never seen before. The caption read, "You were never supposed to find out." I stared at the photo, my hands trembling. It was definitely them, my parents, sitting on a picnic blanket in the park. My mother was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Beside her, a little girl, around 6 years old, played with a stuffed bunny. She looked nothing like Nicole. She looked like me. My skin, my curls, my eyes. I scrolled up. The sender's name was just a random Gmail address, no profile picture, no signature, but that one line haunted me. You were never supposed to find out. Questions flooded my mind. Who was the child? Why hadn't I ever seen her? Had they adopted another daughter after me? Or was she actually their biological child? I couldn't focus. I canceled a sponsorship meeting, locked myself in my apartment, and started digging. Through every bit of digital trail I could find, I located their new home address. They'd moved 2 years ago, into a gated mansion outside Connecticut. I checked the street view. There she was again. Same child, now a little older, riding a pink bicycle up the driveway. I couldn't take it anymore. I booked a private car and drove out that evening. When I arrived, I stayed inside the car, watching from a distance like a ghost from the past. The little girl was playing in the front yard. My father came out to pick up a package. He laughed when she ran to him. He never laughed like that with me. I got out of the car and took a shaky breath. I wasn't sure what I was going to say or even if I should say anything at all. But I needed answers. Before I could take a step, a woman stepped out of the house. She wasn't my mother. She was someone else, much younger. She walked over and kissed my father on the cheek. And that's when I realized. My father had another family. I stood frozen behind a row of hedges, heart pounding so loud I swore someone could hear it. My father smiled as the younger woman handed him a drink. They looked happy, normal, like a perfect little family. I wanted to scream. He had built a new life, a new daughter, a new wife, all while I was scraping coins off gas station counters just to eat. I got back into the car, pulled the door shut, and sat there, staring at nothing. He lied to me. All those years he made me believe I was a burden, that I didn't belong, that I wasn't really his child, that maybe adopting me was a mistake. But now, he had another child, another daughter, and this time, he stayed. It wasn't that he couldn't be a father. He just chose not to be mine. I drove home in silence. Every red light felt like it was mocking me. I barely made it through the front door before collapsing on the floor in tears. It wasn't about the rejection anymore. It was betrayal. I wanted to forget them, erase them from my life entirely. But the photo, the kiss on the cheek, that child's laugh, they played on a loop in my mind. And then it hit me. What if I wasn't adopted after all? What if the story they told me about my birth mother abandoning me, about the charity of their adoption, was all a lie? I had one photo of me as a baby. One, faded, torn, barely clear. It had no hospital logo, no documents, no names, just me, swaddled in a white blanket. I pulled out the box they gave me when they kicked me out. Rummaging through, I found something I'd never noticed before. Tape beneath the lid of the box. A folded paper, yellowed with time. When I opened it, my blood turned cold. It was a birth certificate, and my father's name was on it. I stared at the birth certificate, eyes locked on two names. Father, Richard Evan Calloway. Mother. The space for the mother's name was blank. It didn't make sense. All my life they said I was adopted, that my real mother gave me up and they were kind enough to raise me, but this was legal proof that my father was my biological father. I double-checked everything. The date matched my birthday. The hospital was in the same city where we used to live. And most importantly, my full name at birth was exactly the one I had grown up with. No adoption papers, no agency, no signatures. Just a birth certificate with his name. The lies ran deeper than I thought. This wasn't just about favoritism. This wasn't just about rejection. This was a cover-up. I began searching through public records online, trying to find anything about my mother. I entered my father's name in old newspaper archives, scanned through every page until one tiny article popped up from over 2 decades ago. Young secretary hospitalized after alleged assault by senior partner, case dropped. The name of the senior partner, Richard Evan Calloway. The name of the woman, Layla Mendez. I read it over and over. A chill ran down my spine. That was my mother. And now it all made sense. Why they hated me. Why they called me a mistake behind closed doors. Why they pushed me out the moment I turned 18. Because I was the evidence of a scandal he buried. And now he had moved on. New wife, new child, new life. But I wasn't going to stay buried. No. If he had tried to erase me from the narrative, I was going to write myself right back in. Loud, clear, and in front of the entire world. The question was, how? And then, the idea came. Live TV. If there's one thing the Callaways loved more than control, it was image. They were obsessed with appearances, charity galas, TV interviews, country club fundraisers. My parents carefully curated every smile, every public move. That was their world. And now, I was going to use it against them. A week later, I got an invitation to a live-streamed panel discussion on young entrepreneurs who beat the odds. One of the organizers had seen my viral videos and wanted me to join a segment with other self-made influencers. National broadcast, peak viewership, millions watching. Perfect. I accepted without hesitation, but I knew one thing. This wasn't going to be just another business quanda. This would be my stage, my reckoning. I started gathering everything I needed. I hired a private investigator to confirm what I already suspected. My father had paid off my biological mother to disappear after I was born. No adoption, no legal separation, just hush money, a fake narrative, and my name erased from his future. The PI also found a signed non-disclosure agreement. My mother had worked as a secretary at my father's law firm. She was 19, he was 43. The case was buried, but the paper trail wasn't. I now had evidence, and I had a voice. I sat at my desk, preparing my talking points, not about business but about the truth. I practiced it in front of the mirror every night, not out of fear, but so I wouldn't break. I wanted my voice calm, sharp, unshakable. Then the final twist arrived. Nicole was going to be in the audience. The show had invited influential family members of the guests as part of a surprise appreciation segment. My sister, now a fashion icon with her own clothing line, would be sitting front row, mic'd up, camera ready. Good. Let her watch. Let them all watch. Because when I stepped onto that stage, I wasn't there to be admired. I was there to expose them. The studio was colder than I expected, not temperature-wise, but the energy. Bright lights hummed overhead, and producers rushed back and forth with headsets and clipboards, but none of it felt real. I sat in the makeup chair, staring at myself in the mirror. Gone was the girl who begged for love at the dinner table. What stared back at me now was a woman with fire in her eyes. A producer came over with a smile. We'll start in 10. You'll be on the far left seat. When the host introduces you, just wave and smile. I nodded. I could play the part. I'd done it my whole life. Across the studio, Nicole entered with her entourage. She wore a white designer blazer, oversized sunglasses, and that signature smirk, the same one she used when she laughed as our parents threw me out. She didn't recognize me. Not right away. But when the host introduced me and I walked onto the stage, her head tilted, then her eyes narrowed, then widened. I saw her lips form my old name in a whisper. Amira. Yes, Nicole. It's me. The segment began like any other. Light questions, inspirational answers. I played along, sharing my success story, omitting every ounce of pain they had caused me. Until the host smiled and asked, "So, what's one thing the world does know about your journey?" Right there. That was my moment. I leaned into the mic, my voice steady. Actually, there's a truth I've been hiding, not about business, about my name, about where I came from, and who I used to be. Nicole shifted in her seat. The host glanced at the producer. A red light blinked. Liv. I was told I was adopted, that I was unwanted, but that was a lie. My biological father is a man many of you know, a man who built his life on power and deception. His name is Richard Evan Calloway. Gasps filled the room. Nicole stood up. The host froze. And this isn't just my story. This is the story of a cover-up, of a girl erased because her existence was inconvenient. I reached into my blazer and pulled out a folded paper, the birth certificate. I held it up to the camera. You see this? This is the truth they tried to bury. And just like that, the Calloway empire began to crack. The studio fell into chaos. Producers scrambled, whispering frantically into headsets. The host tried to cut to a commercial, but the live stream couldn't be paused. It was running on multiple platforms with millions watching. And I wasn't finished. Nicole stepped forward, her voice shaking. You can't do this, you don't know what you're talking about. I turned to her slowly, microphone still in hand. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. You just don't like that the world is finally hearing it. I turned back to the audience, cameras zooming in on my face. My father abandoned me, lied to the world. lied to my mother, lied to himself. He built a legacy on silence, on image, on pretending I didn't exist. My voice cracked just slightly, but I didn't stop. But I do exist, and today, I reclaim my name, my story, and my voice. The live chat exploded, tweets flew, clips were instantly reshared, dissected and quoted. I could almost feel the pressure rising in the Calloway mansion, their perfect illusion unraveling like cheap fabric. I saw Nicole shaking her head, mouthing something to a producer. Security hovered near the back, unsure whether to step in. But I was calm. No threats, no shouting, just truth. I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came to speak what should have been spoken a long time ago, to the other kids out there who've been pushed aside, erased, or made to feel like shadows. This is for you. The host finally cut in, flustered and breathless. We're going to take a quick break. Too late. The damage was done. Backstage, Nicole cornered me. How dare you humiliate our family? I looked her dead in the eye. Humiliation requires dignity. You gave that up the moment you stood by and said nothing. Her face turned red, but she didn't reply, because deep down, she knew. Everything I said was true. I walked out of the studio that night not as a victim, but as a storm. And the Calloways? They were just beginning to feel the thunder. The moment I stepped out of the studio, my phone lit up like a wildfire. Missed calls, hundreds of messages, requests for interviews, offers for book deals, documentaries, podcasts. But I ignored them all. For once, the silence belonged to them, not me. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Calloway heir exposed in live broadcast scandal. Secret daughter shatters public image of Richard Calloway. Who is Amira Mendez? Some called me brave. Others called me a liar. The media spun both sides like they always do. But the truth had already sunk its teeth into public memory, and no amount of PR could undo it. And then, the second shoe dropped. My biological mother came forward. Her name was Layla Mendez. She'd been living quietly in Arizona for years under a new identity. When the story broke, she contacted my team through a mutual friend. She was tired of running, tired of hiding. I flew to meet her in person. When I saw her for the first time, my knees nearly gave out. She looked just like me. Same eyes, same hair, same soft, nervous smile. She held my hand and whispered, "I never wanted to leave you. I fought for you. But he had the money, the lawyers. I was just a girl. They forced me out." We cried for hours. She showed me letters she'd tried to send. Every one returned unopened. Photos she kept of me as a baby, the hospital bracelet with my name, and the court documents she was made to sign under threat. I finally understood the full weight of what had been stolen. Not just a childhood, but a mother. Meanwhile, the Calloways went silent. Richard canceled all public appearances. His law firm issued a weak statement about family matters. Nicole posted a cryptic photo of a burning matchstick with the caption, "Some ties are better ash." But nothing could erase what had been broadcast. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful, not out of revenge, but because truth had finally found its voice. 2 weeks after the broadcast, the Calloway estate was drowning. Investors were pulling out of Richard's firm. News outlets kept replaying the video of my reveal on national TV. Online sleuths uncovered more old legal threats, quietly settled lawsuits, whispers of other affairs. The legacy he spent decades crafting was unraveling. But still, not a single word from him. No denial. No apology. Nothing. Until one morning, a white envelope arrived at my apartment. No sender name. Just a handwritten address. I opened it slowly, expecting threats, or worse. But inside was a letter. "Amira, if this is your idea of justice, congratulations. You've won the court of public opinion. But truth is rarely black and white. One day, you may understand what it costs to carry a name like ours. Until then, do what you must. REC." No remorse, no love, just veiled arrogance dressed in formal script. I laughed out loud. For all his power, all his money, Richard Calloway couldn't say 3 simple words. I was wrong. But I didn't need him to. Because I had something far more valuable, a name I gave myself. I went on to write a book, not just about my story, but about survival, about being erased and rewriting your place in the world. The proceeds, donated to shelters for displaced youth, kids like me, thrown out by people who claimed to love them. And yes, I met my mother again. Not just once, but often. We built something slow and real. She still cried when she said my name, like it was something sacred she was finally allowed to say out loud. As for Nicole, she unfollowed me on everything, posted a story that read, "There are two kinds of truth, the kind that heals and the kind that ruins." She didn't realize, sometimes, it's both. It had been 6 months since the broadcast when the formal invitation arrived. Gold embossed, thick cardstock, elegant cursive letters. Calloway family gathering private estate by request of Richard Evan Calloway. At first, I thought it was a joke, or a trap, but something told me I needed to go. Closure doesn't always come with flowers and forgiveness. Sometimes it shows up in the form of a table, set for people who once erased you. So I went. The estate hadn't changed much, same polished marble, same heavy doors, but it all felt smaller now, like the illusion had shrunk. Inside, the dining room was set for 7. I was the last to arrive. Nicole was there, arms crossed, eyes cold. The younger wife sat stiffly beside her, clearly uncomfortable. The new daughter, barely 10, clutched a toy in silence. A few extended family members murmured greetings, unsure what to say. And then, Richard entered. Older than I remembered, slower, but still sharp in posture and presence. He didn't look at me at first, just took his seat at the head of the table. Silence. Then he spoke. I didn't call this to apologize, I called it because pretending hasn't worked. No one breathed. "Amira, you wanted truth. Here it is. You were never a mistake. But you were inconvenient." I kept my eyes on him, unreadable. The world I came from wasn't made for softness or shame. I made choices. Some I regret. Most I bury. You were a consequence of both. He paused, as if tasting the bitterness in his own words. You've made yourself undeniable. And for that, you have my respect. But don't expect my affection. I nodded. I didn't come for your affection, just acknowledgement. He gave a single nod, more like a deal than a gesture of warmth. Dinner was served. Awkward, quiet, tense. But I stayed. Because this time, I was not the outsider. I was the storm they once ignored. And now, I was the silence they had to sit with. After that final dinner, I walked out of the estate one last time, head high, shoulders squared. The mansion behind me felt like a tomb, full of old stories, unspoken regrets, and people still clinging to their lies like lifeboats. But I was free. The story made its rounds for months, then faded like all headlines do. But the ripples, they stayed. Young women reached out to me, some who had lived similar lives. Discarded, overlooked, silenced. They called me brave. But I didn't feel brave. I just felt honest. I launched a foundation in my mother's name, the Layla Project, a program supporting single mothers navigating systems designed to forget them. She cried when I told her. I cried too. Nicole and I never spoke again. Last I heard, Richard retired early, vanished from the public eye. His firm was rebranded. His second wife filed for divorce. The empire stood, but cracked, quieter, humbler. And as for me, I went back to my real name, Amira Mendez. It felt strange at first, wearing a name that once lived in whispers, but now, I spoke it boldly. Every time someone introduced me, every time it echoed in a room, it was a reminder that I was not a shadow, not an accident, not a secret. I was the truth. And sometimes the truth doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it walks onto a live stage and makes the world listen.